and Apache warrior arrived, his son burning with fever. She, who had lost her own baby in childbirth, took him in with trembling hands. And there, without promises, she became the mother he never had. The Mojave Desert burned even in the dead of night. The biting wind kicked up sand that stung like loose embers, and in the middle of that endless vastness, only the sound of hooves against rock broke the deadly silence. Tahua rode as if the devil himself were on his heels. In his arms, wrapped in rabbit furs, little Nayan shivered. The baby's tiny body burned like hot iron, his dark eyes rolled, lost in delirium, and his dry lips moved in weak whimpers that tore at his father's heart. "Hold on, my son," Tahua murmured, his rough voice cut by the wind. "Hold on for both of us." But he knew words weren't enough. Nayen was dying. 3 days before, the fever had begun as a slight mark on the baby's forehead. Tahua used every remedy he knew: willow bark teas, cool creek baths, sacred chants his grandmother had taught him. Nothing worked. The fever only grew, like a fire consuming everything in its path. And now, on the 4th night, Tahua was doing something he never thought he would. He was going to ask a white woman for help. The horse galloped for another hour until, on the horizon, the dark shadow of a wooden cabin appeared. Smoke rose from the chimney, a sign that someone was awake. Tahua pulled the reins, and the animal stopped, snorting and trembling with exhaustion. The cabin was small, simple, surrounded by a garden where medicinal herbs and a few stubborn vegetables insisted on sprouting from the arid soil. A low wooden fence protected the property, more to mark territory than to prevent entry. Tahua dismounted, holding Nayen against his chest. The baby no longer cried. He only breathed in short, quick gasps that chilled his father's blood. He knocked on the door. Once, twice. "Who's there?" A woman's voice came from inside, cautious but firm. "My son, he dying," Tahua said in broken English, each word an effort. "I need help." Silence. Then the sound of approaching footsteps. The door opened just a crack, revealing a grey-blue eye that studied him suspiciously. Eleanor Sawyer wasn't young anymore, but she wasn't old either. Perhaps in her mid-30s, with brown hair pulled into a loose bun and signs of weariness on her face. She wore a simple cotton dress, stained with dirt and herbs. Her hands, visibly calloused, held a Winchester rifle. "You're Apache," she said. It wasn't a question. "I am. What do you want from me?" Tahua held up the bundle in his arms. Nayen's brown skin was red and sweaty, his lips cracked, his eyes closed in unconsciousness. "He burning," Tahua said, and for the first time in 2 years his voice trembled. "Can't save alone." Eleanor looked at the baby. Something shifted in her face. The suspicion didn't vanish, but was pushed aside by something stronger. Maternal instinct. "Come in," she said, opening the door. The cabin was small, but organized. A wooden table occupied the center, surrounded by shelves filled with jars of dried herbs, ointments, and home remedies. An iron stove crackled in the corner, heating water in a large pot. The scent of chamomile and eucalyptus hung in the air. "Put him here," Eleanor pointed to the table, clearing away papers and instruments. Tahua hesitated for a second before letting go of his son. Nayen seemed even smaller, lying on the table, a fragile little doll lost in the world. Eleanor approached and touched the baby's forehead. Her fingers were firm, steady, accustomed to examining and diagnosing. "How long?" 4 days. "Did you try to bring the fever down?" "Everything I know how to do." Eleanor nodded and went to a shelf, picking up jars and measuring out portions with precision. Her hands moved quickly, but without haste, like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. "I'll prepare a bath. The water needs to be warm, not cold, and we'll give him white willow bark tea every 2 hours." She paused and looked at Tahua, who hadn't moved from the table. "You'll have to trust me." "I trust no one," he replied. But he didn't move away from his son. "Then trust him," Eleanor pointed to Nayen. "Trust that he wants to live." Tahua looked at the baby. Nayen was all that remained of his wife, Ayana. She had died in childbirth, bleeding until there was no life left in her. In Tahua's arms, she had whispered the name she wanted to give their son, Nayen, he who struggles. And ever since, father and son were just the two of them against a world that didn't want them. "All right," he said. Eleanor prepared the bath in a large basin, testing the temperature with her elbow. Then, carefully, she took off Nayen's fur clothes and immersed him in the warm water. The baby reacted immediately. His little eyes opened, confused, and he let out a weak cry. But it was a cry of life, not agony. "Good sign," Eleanor murmured. "He still has the strength to complain." Tahua almost smiled. Almost. Eleanor kept Nayen in the water for a few minutes, gently sponging his tiny body, which was hot with fever. Her hands were gentle, maternal, as if this baby were her own. "You have children?" Tahua asked, watching her every move. Eleanor paused for a second. When she went back to rubbing Nayen's chest, her voice was softer. "I did. He died. Stillborn." The words hung in the air like smoke. Tahua understood why she had opened the door for him, why she hadn't hesitated to help. Pain recognizes pain. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry about your wife, too," Eleanor replied without looking at him. "I saw it in your face when you spoke of the boy. It's the same I carry." They worked in silence after that. Eleanor dried Nayen with a soft towel and wrapped him in a clean blanket. The willow bark tea was ready, and she managed to get the baby to drink a few drops. "We need to bring the fever down slowly," she explained, sitting in a chair beside the table. "If it's too fast, it can be dangerous." Tahua pulled another chair and sat opposite her. Between them, Nayen breathed more easily. The intense red color was giving way to a rosier tone. He was still warm, but it was no longer the burning heat of the past few days. "Why did you help me?" Tahua asked. Eleanor took a moment to answer. She looked at Nayen as if seeing something she had lost long ago. "Because I know what it's like to lose a child," she said finally. "And I know that the pain of losing a child has no skin color. The other white people don't think like that. The other white people haven't lost what I have." Tahua studied her face. Eleanor had premature wrinkles around her eyes, the mark of someone who had cried a lot. Her hands were rough from hard work, and there was a small, almost imperceptible scar on her chin. But her eyes, even tired, still held life. "What's your name?" he asked. Eleanor Sawyer." She hesitated. "And you?" "Tahua." "And him?" "Nayen. It means he who struggles." Eleanor smiled for the first time since the door had opened. A small, almost shy, but real smile. "That's a strong name. He'll need to be strong. Why do you live alone? Don't your people accept you?" Tahua clenched his jaw. It was a painful question to answer. "After Ayana died, I couldn't stay with them anymore. Every face reminded me of her. Every child's laughter showed me what Nayen wouldn't have." He touched his son's small hand. "I preferred to live alone. It's easier." "Easier doesn't mean better," Eleanor said softly. "And you? Why do you live alone?" Eleanor looked out the window, at the desert stretching endlessly under the starry sky. "After I lost my baby, people looked at me with pity, or with fear, as if death were contagious. My husband couldn't bear the grief and started drinking. He died in a riding accident 3 months later." She sighed. "I came here because no one knows me. No one knows my story. But they still look. Yes, they still do." Nayen stirred, letting out a long sigh. The fever was breaking. Tahua felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. "Thank you," he said. "It's not over yet. We'll have to take care of him for the next few days. The fever could return." "I can't stay here." "Why not?" "Because you're a white woman alone, and I'm an Apache. If someone sees us together, they'll draw conclusions." Eleanor laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. "What conclusions? That I'm helping a sick child? That I'm a nurse doing my job?" "You know it's not just that." She knew. In the past 5 years, tensions between settlers and Apache had risen. There had been massacres on both sides, entire families killed for land, water, revenge, and a white woman helping an Apache would be seen as betrayal. "So what do you propose?" she asked. "I'll come back tomorrow night, and the night after. Until he's well. And what if the fever returns before then?" Tahua had no answer for that. He looked at Nayen, who was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, and then at Eleanor, who had saved him without asking for anything in return. "Why did you do this?" he asked again. "You could have closed the door." Eleanor touched Nayen's forehead with her fingertips, checking his temperature. "Because when I looked at him, I saw my son, who was never born. And when I looked at you, I saw the father I could never be for anyone." The words hung between them, laden with a truth that both hurt and healed. Tahua picked Nayen up. The baby was cooler, breathing better. Eleanor had saved his life. "I'll be back tomorrow," he said. "I'll be here." Tahua walked to the door but stopped before leaving. "Eleanor?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not closing the door." She smiled again. This time the smile reached her eyes. "Thank you for knocking." Tahua mounted his horse with Nayen in his arms and rode back into the desert, but something had changed that night. For the first time in 2 years, he wasn't completely alone. Behind him, Eleanor stood in the doorway until his silhouette disappeared into the darkness. Then she went back inside, cleared the table, and put away the medicine bottles. But she couldn't sleep. She kept feeling the weight of the baby in her arms and the father's grateful look in her eyes. And for the first time since losing everything, Eleanor Sawyer felt that perhaps she still had a purpose in this world. Eleanor couldn't sleep that night. She sat in the rocking chair near the window, gazing out at the desert and thinking about the weight of the Apache baby in her arms. Her hands still held the memory of that fever-hot skin, and her ears still heard the faint cry that had almost fallen silent forever. When the sun rose, painting the sky orange and pink, she was already up preparing more remedies. She didn't know if Tahua would return. She didn't know if Nayen's fever had come back during the night, but she knew that for the first time in 2 years, there was a reason for her to exist. Outside, Thomas Reed pounded on the door as if to break it down. "Eleanor, open this door right now!" Eleanor sighed. Thomas was her closest neighbor, a cattle rancher who lived 5 miles away. A tough man, of few words and many prejudices. He was also the only one who cared enough to check on her, in his rough and inconvenient way. "Good morning, Thomas," she said, opening the door. Thomas Reed was a large man, with broad shoulders and hands that looked like they could break rocks. He wore a worn leather hat and boots stained with manure. His small, suspicious eyes swept the cabin as if searching for evidence of some crime. "Is it true what Jimmy Garrett is spreading around town?" he asked bluntly. "Depends on what Jimmy's saying. That he saw an Apache leaving your property in the dead of night." Eleanor felt her stomach clench, but she kept her face neutral. "Jimmy Garrett, he drinks too much and sees things where they don't exist. He wasn't drunk. He was coming back from the Morrison Ranch when he saw it. Said it was an Apache on horseback, carrying something in his arms. And why would that be my problem?" Thomas stepped inside the cabin, forcing Eleanor to retreat. "Because you're a woman alone in a dangerous region, and there's Apache, don't pay social visits. If one of them came here, it was to steal or worse. Nothing was stolen." "How can you be sure?" Eleanor looked him in the eyes. Thomas Reed wasn't a bad man, but he was a product of his time and place. To him, Apache was synonymous with savage, thief, murderer. He wouldn't be able to understand that a desperate father had asked for help to save his son. "I'm sure because nothing's missing, Thomas, and I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine." Thomas didn't seem convinced. His eyes continued to scan the cabin, noticing the basin still on the floor, the damp towels hanging, the stronger-than-usual smell of medicinal herbs. "Have you been taking care of someone sick?" "I take care of those who need it. It's my job." "Your job is to take care of civilized people, not savages." Eleanor felt anger rise in her throat, but she swallowed it. Arguing with Thomas would only cause more trouble. Want some coffee? She offered, changing the subject. Can't stay. Just came to tell you I'm going to talk to Sheriff Dawson's about this. If Apache are roaming the area, he needs to know. Thomas, it's for your own good, Eleanor, and for the good of all of us. He left, leaving Eleanor with a churning stomach and a pounding heart. Sheriff Dawson was a tough man who believed that a good Apache was a dead Apache. If Thomas spoke to him, there would be trouble. Trouble for Tahua and for Nayen. The day passed slowly. Eleanor tried to maintain her normal routine, tending the garden, organizing her remedies, reading her Bible, but she couldn't stop thinking about the baby and his father. Was Nayen okay? Had the fever returned? Would Tahua really come that night? As the sun began to set, she lit the lamp in the window. It was a signal. If Tahua was watching from afar, he would know it was safe to approach. At 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. 3 soft knocks. Eleanor opened it, and there was Tahua with Nayen in his arms. The baby was awake, eyes alert, no longer crying. The fever had almost completely broken. How is he? She asked, motioning them inside. Better. Much better. Tahua entered, but stayed near the door, tense. But I want to be sure. Eleanor approached and touched Nayen's forehead. The baby looked at her with curiosity, as if he recognized her. When she smiled, he gave a toothless grin back. The fever's gone, she said, relieved, but I'll prepare more medicine in case it comes back. Thank you. Tahua sat in the chair he had occupied the night before, watching Eleanor prepare the tea. She moved efficiently around the cabin, like a rehearsed dance. Every gesture had a purpose. You saved my life, he said suddenly. Eleanor stopped stirring the tea. I saved his life, not yours. To me, it's the same. Eleanor understood. If Nayen died, Tahua would die with him. Perhaps not his body, but everything that mattered inside him. My neighbor came here today, she said, returning to stir the tea. Someone saw you leaving yesterday. Tahua became still. Eleanor could feel the tension radiating from him like heat. What did he say? That he's going to talk to the sheriff. Then I can't come back anymore. Yes, you can. Eleanor turned to him, determination on her face. You just need to be more careful. Why are you doing this? The question caught her off guard. Eleanor looked at Nayen, who was playing with his own fingers, oblivious to the adult's problems. Because for the first time in 2 years, I feel like I'm serving a purpose. You always served a purpose. No, I existed, it's different. Tahua studied her face. There was an honesty there that he wasn't used to seeing in white people. Most lied, manipulated, hid their true intentions. Eleanor was different. Her pain was real. Her kindness, too. Can I ask you a question? He said. Of course. How did your baby die? Eleanor hesitated. It was a question no one asked. People were afraid of the answer, as if death were contagious. Umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, she said softly. When he was born, he was already blue. I tried everything, but... Her voice faltered. 3 days later, my husband started blaming me. Said I should have noticed, done something different. It wasn't your fault. I know that now. But back then, she sighed. Back then I believed him. Tahua looked at Nayen, imagining what it would be like to lose that child. Just thinking about it, he felt a physical pain in his chest. What was his name? Your baby's. Samuel, like my father. Samuel is a strong name. I wanted him to be strong. Eleanor smiled sadly. I wanted him to grow up and become a good man, courageous. Perhaps he was courageous. Perhaps he chose not to stay in a world that wasn't ready for him. Eleanor looked at Tahua, surprised. She had never thought of her son's death that way. It was always guilt, failure, tragedy, never a choice. You believe that? I believe that sometimes souls choose when to leave. My wife died in childbirth, but she had time to give me a name for the baby. She had time to make me promise I would take care of him, as if she knew. Ayana was her name? Yes, it means eternal flower. That's beautiful. She was beautiful, inside and out. They fell silent for a moment, each lost in their own memories. Nayen began to whimper, and Eleanor automatically stood up. "Are you hungry?" "Probably." "I have goat's milk. I can warm it up." As Eleanor prepared the makeshift bottle, Tahua watched how she moved. There was something maternal in every gesture, as if caring for children was her deepest nature. Nayen also seemed to sense this, stretching his little arms towards her. "He likes you," Tahua said. "Children feel when someone loves them." "And do you love him?" Eleanor stopped stirring the milk. The question was simple, but the answer was complicated. How could she love a child she had known for only 2 days? How could she feel that instinctive protection for a baby who wasn't hers? "Yes," she said finally. "I don't know how, but yes." Tahua nodded, as if that answer made perfect sense. "He loves you too. I see it in his eyes." Eleanor gave Nayen the bottle, and he sucked eagerly. Tahua watched everything carefully, memorizing every detail. The way Eleanor held the baby, how she spoke to him in a low voice, how she checked if the milk temperature was right. "You would be a good mother," he said. "I was. For 3 minutes." "No, I meant—" Tahua hesitated. "You are a good mother." Now, to him. Eleanor looked at Nayen, who gazed back at her with dark, intelligent eyes. Would it be crazy to think of that baby as her son? Would it be wrong to want to care for him, protect him, watch him grow? "Tahua," she said carefully, "what happens when he's completely well? Will you stop coming here?" "I don't know, because She stopped, unsure how to continue. "What?" "I don't want to stop seeing him. Both of you." Tahua didn't answer immediately. He was thinking the same thing. In the past 2 days, for the first time since Ayana's death, he hadn't felt completely alone. Eleanor cared for Nayen with true love, without self-interest, without judgment, and she cared for him too, in a way. She offered food, tea, a warm place to rest. "I don't want to stop coming either," he admitted. "Then don't stop." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because you're white and I'm Apache. Because if anyone finds out, they'll think you're betraying your own people. They'll hurt you." "What if I don't care?" "You should care." Eleanor shook her head, stubborn. "I spent 2 years caring what people thought. 2 years hiding, being ashamed, blaming myself. I'm not going to live like that anymore." "Eleanor." "No." She stood up, still holding Nayen. "This child needs both of us. You need help raising him, and I need a purpose to keep existing. Why does this have to be complicated?" "Because the world insists on complicating everything that's good." Eleanor looked out the window, at the dark immensity of the desert. Out there were men like Thomas Reed and Sheriff Dawson, who believed that Apache were less than human. There were women like those in town, who looked at her with pity and disdain. There was an entire world that would say she was wrong. But inside that cabin, with a baby in her arms and a grateful father beside her, none of that seemed to matter. "Then let them complicate it," she said finally. "I'm tired of living to please others." Tahua looked at her with something that could be admiration. Eleanor Sawyer wasn't the fragile, broken woman he had found 2 days earlier. There was fire in her now, determination. "Are you sure you want this?" "I've never been so sure of anything in my life." "Then it's a deal. I'll keep coming. Every night. Every night." Nayen had finished his bottle and was sleeping in Eleanor's arms. Tahua stood to take him, but she gestured for him not to worry. "Let him stay a little longer," she asked. "It's been a long time since I rocked a child to sleep." Tahua sat down again, watching the scene. Eleanor softly hummed a song he didn't know, gently swaying. Nayen was completely relaxed, a small smile on his face. This is how a family should be, Tahua thought. Not people connected only by blood, but people who chose to care for each other. "Eleanor," he said softly. "Yes?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For not being afraid of us." Eleanor smiled, continuing to rock Nayen. "Thank you for letting me be a part of his life. You already are." And she truly was. At that moment, in that cabin, the three formed something none of them expected to find, a family. Outside, the desert wind howled, bringing storms, but inside that cabin, for the first time in a long time, there was peace. a peace that would soon be tested. Because in the middle of the night, while Eleanor and Tahua talked quietly and Nayen slept peacefully, men on horseback approached the property. Men with guns and bad intentions. The sound of hooves and rough voices cut the night's peace like a blade. Eleanor looked at Tahua, fear etched on her face. He rose slowly, all muscles tense, his warrior instincts on high alert. "How many?" she whispered. Tahua went to the window, peeking through a crack in the curtain. 4 men on horseback surrounded the cabin. He recognized Sheriff Dawson. By the star on his chest, Thomas Reed by his distinctive hat, and 2 others who seemed to be local ranchers. 4, he murmured. Armed. Eleanor clutched Nayen to her chest. The baby had woken with the noise, but wasn't crying, as if he knew he needed to be quiet. "What do we do?" she asked. "You go out and say there's no one here. I'll hide." "Where?" "The cabin's too small. Under the bed, in the attic, they'll search everywhere." Eleanor shook her head. "It won't work." "Eleanor," Thomas Reed shouted, "don't make me break down this door." "Just a minute," she replied, trying to buy time. Tahua looked around, desperate. There was no way to escape without putting Eleanor and Nayen in danger, but he also couldn't surrender. He knew Dawson's reputation. An Apache who fell into his hands rarely survived to trial. "Do you have a gun?" he asked. "I have the rifle, but..." "But what?" Eleanor looked at Nayen, then at Tahua. A decision formed in her eyes. Determination mixed with what looked like despair. "But it won't be necessary." She walked to the door and opened it. Outside, 4 men pointed guns at her. Sheriff Dawson was a small, thin man with a grizzled mustache and eyes hard as stone. Thomas Reed stood beside him, his face set in disapproval. The other 2 she didn't know, but they were clearly local ranchers, brought as witnesses. "Where is he?" Dawson asked without ceremony. "Who?" "Don't play games with me, Eleanor. We know an Apache was here." "Jimmy Garrett, you saw him." Thomas confirmed the signs. Eleanor took a deep breath. In the doorway of the cabin, with Nayen in her arms, she seemed small and defenseless. But there was something different in her posture, a firmness that hadn't been there before. "It's true," she said. "An Apache came here." Thomas Reed almost fell off his horse. Confessing just like that, without batting an eye. "I have nothing to hide." Eleanor lifted Nayen for everyone to see. This baby was dying of fever. His father brought him here for me to care for. I'm a nurse. "It was my duty to help." Dawson dismounted, his gun still pointed at her. "Where are they now?" "The baby's here with me. His father left." "Lies." Dawson took a step forward. "I saw fresh horse tracks near your fence. They arrived recently." "Sheriff," Eleanor said calmly, "do you have children?" The question caught him off guard. "I do. 2 boys. And if one of them was dying of fever, and the only person who could save him was an Apache, would you ask for help?" "That's different." Why?" "Because my children aren't savages." Eleanor felt anger rise in her throat, but she controlled it. Instead, she walked down the porch steps, getting closer to the men. "Sheriff Dawson, this baby is 6 months old. He doesn't talk, he doesn't walk, he has no prejudices. Tell me, what makes him different from your children?" "Eleanor," Thomas Reed interjected, "you've lost your mind. These Apache hunters have killed entire families. They're murderers. Has this baby killed anyone? That's not the point, and you know it. Then what is?" Eleanor raised her voice for the first time. "Because he has darker skin. Because his father was born in a tribe instead of a town. Because they're savages," Dawson shouted. "They have no soul, no civilization. This baby's father rode miles in the middle of the night, desperate to save his son. He thanked me in English, cared for his child more tenderly than many white fathers I've seen." Eleanor pointed at the men. "Tell me, who here is being savage now?" The men were silent for a moment. Dawson looked ready to explode with rage. "I'm not going to stand here listening to a sermon from a woman who's lost her mind," he said. "Either you hand over the Kite Apache, or we go in there and get him." "No!" The word came out firm, clear, final. Eleanor hugged Nayen tighter and looked at the four men as if she could face them alone. No. Dawson laughed, but it was a humorless laugh. You're going to stop four armed men? If necessary. Eleanor, Thomas Reed tried a softer approach. Be sensible. You're a respected woman, the widow of a good man. Don't ruin your reputation for the sake of a savage. My reputation? Eleanor laughed bitterly. Thomas, you've been whispering behind my back for 2 years. You look at me with pity and disdain. You say I'm crazy, that I talk to myself, that God punished me by taking my child. What reputation am I protecting? Eleanor. No, she screamed, and the force in her voice made the horses recoil. I'm tired of pretending I don't hear. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of living as if I'm guilty of something. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice didn't tremble. You want to know the truth? I'll tell you the truth. My baby didn't die by accident. My husband was drunk on the day of delivery and fell on me. The cord wrapped around Samuel's neck because I fell, because he pushed me. And then, when our son was stillborn, he blamed me, said it was God's punishment for me being a bad wife. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to stop. You think I'm crazy? Maybe I am, because a sane woman would accept living blamed for a tragedy she didn't cause. A sane woman would let men like you decide what's right and wrong in her own home. Eleanor wiped her tears with her free hand, but kept her head held high. This Apache baby gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever, a purpose, and his father treated me with more respect in 3 days than you have in 2 years. So, no. Sheriff Dawson, I'm not handing anyone over. Dawson pointed the gun directly at her. Then you'll die with them. No, she won't. The voice came from inside the cabin. Tahuar appeared at the door, his hands empty, but his posture erect. There was dignity in every step he took towards the armed men. Tahuar, no! Eleanor cried. It's all right, he said calmly. You've done your part. Now let me do mine. He placed himself between Eleanor and the guns, shielding her with his own body. I'm who you want, he said to Dawson. The woman and the child did nothing wrong. You're right, Dawson smiled cruelly. The woman was just stupid, but that's not a crime. Leave her alone. I'll do whatever you want, but don't hurt her. You're not in a position to negotiate, Apache. Yes, I am. Dawson frowned. How so? Tahuar looked into each man's eyes, one by one. There was something in that gaze that made them hesitate. Because you need me alive. Why? Because there's a bounty on my head, $1,000, but only if you take me alive to Fort Apache. Eleanor gasped. $1,000 was a fortune. Now she understood why they had come in a group, armed, prepared. It wasn't just about an Apaches on a white woman's property. It was about money. How do you know that? Dawson asked, suspicious. Because I killed Lieutenant Morrison 3 months ago in revenge for the death of my wife and 20 people from my tribe. Silence fell upon them again. Eleanor looked at Tahuar, shocked. He had never mentioned anything about it. Morrison was hunting Apache for sport. Tahuar continued, his voice firm. He attacked our camp at night, killed sleeping women and children. My wife was pregnant. They killed her and cut the child from her belly. For fun? Thomas Reed paled. Even Dawson seemed disturbed. So yes, Tahuar said, I killed Morrison, and I would kill him again, but don't touch her. She's not guilty of my crimes. Tahuar, Eleanor whispered, tears in her eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you already carried enough pain. You didn't need to carry mine, too. Dawson slightly lowered his gun, calculating. $1,000 bounty. Divided by 4, it was still $250 for each of them. It was more money than any of them saw in 6 months. All right, he said finally, you come with us without resisting and we won't touch the woman. And the child, Tahuar added. And the damn child. Tahuar nodded. He started walking towards the horse Dawson had brought for him, but Eleanor cried out, No! She ran and placed herself in front of him, Nayan still in her arms. "I won't let you go." "Eleanor, no!" She looked at the four men. "You want the bounty? Then listen closely. This man isn't a criminal. He's a father who lost his wife and almost lost his son. He's a man who asked for help when he needed it and thanked when he received it." "Eleanor, stop," Tahua said softly. "I won't stop." She turned to him, her eyes shining with tears and determination. "You said Morrison killed your pregnant wife, that he killed innocent children?" "Yes." "Then you're not a murderer. You're a man who sought justice when the law failed. The law doesn't see it that way." "Then the law is wrong." Eleanor turned back to Dawson. "Sheriff, did you know Lieutenant Morrison?" Dawson hesitated before answering. "I did. And did you know what kind of man he was?" "That's beside the point." "It is too." Eleanor took a step forward. "Because if you're honest, you'll admit that Morrison was a sadist, that he killed for pleasure, not duty." Dawson didn't answer, but the expression on his face said it all. "And you," Eleanor pointed to Thomas and the other ranchers, "you have children, wives. If someone came into your homes at night and killed your families, what would you do?" "It's different," Thomas mumbled, but without conviction. "Why? Because you're white. Because your lives are worth more." "Eleanor," Dawson said, impatient. "You can talk until dawn, but it doesn't change anything. He's a fugitive, there's a bounty, and we're taking him. Then you'll have to take me too." "What?" Eleanor raised her chin, defiant. "If you take him, you take me too, and the baby. You really have lost your mind." "Maybe, but it's my choice." Tahua gently touched her arm. "Eleanor, you don't understand. If you help me escape, you'll become a criminal too. They'll arrest you. And if I stay here, I'll die anyway." She looked into his eyes. "Not the death of the body, but the death of the soul. Because I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I could have saved you and chose not to. Eleanor, in the last 3 days, for the first time in 2 years, I've felt alive. I felt needed. I felt loved." Her voice trembled, but it didn't break. "I won't give that up. I won't give up on you too." Nayan, as if understanding the tension of the moment, began to cry. Eleanor gently swayed him, whispering words of comfort. "This baby needs a father," she said, looking at Dawson. "And I need a family. I won't let you destroy that." "Enough," Dawson exploded. "I didn't come here to listen to a hysterical woman." He raised his gun again, but was interrupted by a voice none of them expected to hear. "Sheriff Dawson." Everyone turned. From the shadows emerged a tall, well-dressed man, mounted on a black horse. He wore a dark suit and a felt hat, and there was a different star on his chest. A federal star. "Marshal Williams?" Dawson seemed confused. "What are you doing here?" The marshal dismounted calmly, his movements calculated and sure. "We received an anonymous tip about suspicious activities on this property. I came to investigate." "Suspicious activities? We're just apprehending a fugitive." "What fugitive?" Dawson pointed to Tahua. "This. Apache. There's a $1,000 bounty on him." Marshal Williams approached Tahua, studying him carefully. "Name?" "Tahua." "Last name?" "I don't have a white man's last name." "Tribe?" "Chiricahua." The marshal nodded and took a paper from the inside pocket of his jacket. He unfolded it and studied it in the moonlight. "Interesting," he said finally. "What's interesting?" Dawson asked, impatient. "This wanted poster." Williams held up the paper. "It says here that the Apache Tahua is wanted for the murder of Lieutenant Morrison. $1,000 reward, dead or alive." "Exactly. That's why we're taking him. Problem is, Sheriff, the marshal smiled ironically. "This poster was cancelled a week ago." "Cancelled?" "New information came to light about Lieutenant Morrison's death. Surviving witnesses from the Sayhud Apache camp massacre. It seems Morrison really was hunting Indians shabtu for sport, as Mr. Tahua said." Eleanor felt her heart pound. Could it be true? "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means the federal government recognized that Morrison acted outside the law. that the attack on the Apache camp was unauthorized and constituted mass murder. Williams folded the paper and put it away, and that any action taken in defense against Morrison was considered self-defense. Dawson looked like he had swallowed a rock. So there's no bounty? There's no bounty, there's no crime, and there's no reason to arrest anyone. Thomas Reed muttered a low curse. The other ranchers started whispering among themselves, clearly disappointed. "There's one more thing," Williams continued. "The federal investigation into Morrison's activities revealed that he was being protected by some local sheriffs who knew about his illegal activities and chose to ignore them." Dawson paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Williams took another paper from his pocket. "Because I have here a report detailing payments made by Morrison to the Santa Elena Sheriff's Office. Your jurisdiction, Sheriff Dawson." "That's a lie." "Is it? Then you won't mind coming with me to answer some questions." Dawson looked around, realizing that the situation had completely changed. From hunter, he had become prey. I have matters to attend to here first." "What matters? Arresting an innocent man? Threatening a defenseless woman?" Williams took a step towards Dawson. "I think those matters can wait." Thomas Reed cleared his throat. "Marshal, we didn't know anything about Morrison. We just came because we thought there was a fugitive." "I understand, and I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Reed." Williams looked at the other ranchers. "You're free to go. But I suggest that in the future you verify your information better before forming armed groups." The three men didn't need to be told twice. They mounted their horses and galloped away, disappearing into the darkness. Dawson, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. Williams handcuffed him and put him on his own horse. "Sheriff Dawson, you are under arrest for complicity in murder and corruption. You have the right to remain silent." As Williams led Dawson away, Eleanor and Tawa stood alone in front of the cabin, still processing what had happened. "Is it true?" Eleanor asked. "You're really free." "Looks like it." They looked at each other for a long moment. Nayen had stopped crying and was watching them curiously, as if he understood that something important had happened. "Now what?" she asked. "Now," Tawa smiled, and it was the first true smile she'd seen on his face. "Now we're a family." Eleanor began to cry. Tears of relief, of joy, of hope. Tawa embraced her, holding her and Nayen in his strong arms. "Are you sure this is what you want?" he asked softly. "A hard life with two Apache?" "I'm sure I want a life with love," she replied, "and that's what you both give me. It'll be hard. People will talk. Let them talk. I've learned that other people's opinions don't decide my happiness." Tahua gently touched her face, wiping away her tears. "Eleanor Sawyer, you saved me. You saved both of us." "No," she smiled through her tears. "You saved me. You gave me back my life." Nayen chose that moment to let out a loud burp, making them both laugh. "I think someone's hungry again," Eleanor said. "He always is." Tawa chuckled. "It's the Apache in him." They walked back into the cabin together. Eleanor prepared another bottle while Tawa stoked the fire. They moved in harmony, as if they had done it 1,000 times before. "Can I ask a question?" Eleanor said, giving Nayen the bottle. "Of course. How did the marshal know you were here?" "He said he received an anonymous tip." Tahua smiled mysteriously. "Maybe it was a guardian angel." "Tahua, all right," he sighed. 2 days ago, when I first came here, someone was watching me. A man on horseback far away, in the hills. I thought he was a bounty hunter, but he didn't approach. And this morning, before coming here, I saw him again. This time he waved as if he wanted to speak. I went to him. Who was it? An Apache scout who works for the Federal Army. He said he'd heard about the investigation into Morrison and knew I was being unjustly pursued. He offered to contact Marshal Williams. Eleanor shook her head, smiling. "So you knew we were safe when you left the cabin?" "I didn't know. I hoped. But I was willing to die if necessary to protect you two." Eleanor looked at him, her heart overflowing with love. "And I was willing to die to protect you." "Why would you do that?" "Because I love you." The words came out simple, natural, true. Tahua stopped tending the fire and looked at her. "I love you too," he said. "I thought I would never be able to love anyone again after Ayana. But you gave me back my heart. And you gave me back my life." Nayan had finished his bottle and was sleeping peacefully in Eleanor's arms. Tahua approached and touched his son's head. "He's lucky," he said softly. "He'll grow up with two mothers, Ayana in his heart and you in his arms." "And I'm lucky to have two men in my life," Eleanor smiled. "One to protect, one to care for." "Three," Tahua corrected. "Three. Samuel is part of the family too. Always will be." Eleanor started crying again, but these were tears of healing. For the first time since losing her baby, she could think of her son without feeling only pain. There was longing, but also gratitude. Gratitude for the time they had, however short. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For letting me be his mother too. Thank you for wanting to be." They stayed there, the three of them, as the fire crackled and the desert wind sang outside. An improbable family, forged by pain, by necessity, by love. The next day, Tahua brought his few possessions to the cabin. It wasn't much, some clothes, weapons, tools, and a small altar with sacred objects from his tribe. Eleanor made room for everything, adapting her home to become their home. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Some neighbors avoided them, others stared with curiosity or disapproval. But there were also those who supported them. The new sheriff, a fair man named Sheriff Murphys, made it clear that they had the protection of the law. The town doctor, Dr. Harrison, visited the cabin and was impressed by Eleanor's knowledge of medicine. "It would be a shame to waste your talent," he said. "The town needs a good nurse." And so Eleanor went back to work, caring for the sick and injured in the region. Tahua hunted and traded furs, using his skills to provide for the family. Nayen grew strong and healthy, speaking his first words in both English and Apache. 6 months after their first meeting on a warm spring afternoon, Eleanor was in the garden when she saw Tahua approaching with something in his hands. "What's that?" she asked. "A gift." He extended a necklace made of colorful beads and feathers. "In my tribe, when a man wants to marry, he offers a necklace to the chosen woman." Eleanor touched the necklace with reverence. It was beautiful, delicate, made with care. "Is this a proposal?" she asked, smiling. "It is." Tahua knelt in front of her. "Eleanor Sawyer, will you marry me? Will you officially be Nayen's mother and the wife of a stubborn Apache?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, yes, yes." Tahua placed the necklace around her neck and kissed her. It was their first kiss, soft and full of promises. Nayen, who was playing in the grass near them, clapped his hands and shouted, "Mama! Papa!" They were his first complete words, and they couldn't have chosen a better moment. They married in a simple ceremony, officiated by the town priest and blessed by the Apache rituals Tahua knew. Eleanor wore a simple white cotton dress and the beaded necklace. Tahua wore his best leather clothes and sacred feathers. There weren't many guests. Dr. Harrison, the new Sheriff Murphy, a few neighbors who had become Eleanor's friends, and the Apache scout who had helped save Tahua. But there was enough love to fill a cathedral. At the makeshift altar in the cabin garden, with Nayen in Eleanor's arms, they exchanged their vows. "I promise to love you and protect our family," Tahua said. "I promise to be the husband you deserve and the father Nayen needs. I promise to care for you with all my heart," Eleanor replied. "I promise to be the wife and mother you deserve today and always." When the priest declared them husband and wife, Nayen shouted, "Mama, Papa!" again, drawing laughter from everyone present. That night, after the guests had left and Nayen was sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Eleanor and Tahua sat on the porch, watching the stars. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I thought possible." She snuggled against him. "And you?" "I feel reborn." Like my life began again that night when I knocked on your door. Our life began that night. You're right. They fell silent for a moment, just enjoying the peace of the night and each other's presence. Tahua, Eleanor said finally. Yes? Thank you for knocking on the door. Thank you for opening it. And inside the cabin, Nayen slept peacefully, dreaming of a life surrounded by love. A child who had been on the verge of death and now had not one, but two people willing to give their lives for him. A family born of pain, grown in love, and strengthened by the choice not to give up on each other. In the Mojave Desert, where the biting wind carried stories of loss and tragedy, it also now carried a story of hope. The story of how a desperate father, a rejected woman, and a sick baby found each other and discovered that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about love. It's about never giving up.